the tough part about it is Bradley Beal was injured quite a bit of the season. Devin Booker went out with a few injuries here and there. And that group together, those three together, never really got a chance to really get in a consistent rhythm over the course of the regular season. So I think it's kind of showing here in the playoffs, whereas they kind of get away from what really works for them sometimes. Like I just described, when they are going one on one over the course of a game, that style of play doesn't really work for them. It really turns when they are moving the basketball and they're attacking closeouts and they're forcing the defense to rotate. That's when they are at their best. So sometimes they tend to get away from that. And I think that is just kind of a product of they just haven't had the necessary reps together because Bradley Beal had 15 points on 6 for 10 shooting. He shot well from the floor, but that's just not going to cut it. And Devin Booker, 18 points on 5 for 16 shooting. We have to figure out a way to get everyone involved because that's what they brought Bradley Beal there for. And they have to figure out a way to work together and be able to play off of each other in a lot more efficient way. So that's what the Suns have to do. And if they do that, I feel like they have a chance to turn this series and win some games because with the Timberwolves, like I mentioned, my concerns with them is their half court offense. And when they are hitting shots, when they're doing well, they are a really tough team to beat. But consistency on the offensive end and the half court has been their Achilles heel. They tend to mainly rely on Anthony Edwards to create shots, and then he gets into pull up jump shots and tougher shots that aren't as favorable. And the Suns actually, their game plan is to force Anthony Edwards into tough shots and to load up on him in the screen and roll and dig down on him when he's driving, making him have to take either tough shots or make tougher reads. And it was working earlier in the game. Anthony Edwards turned the ball over a few times and he had to take a few tougher shots. It wasn't as clean of looks as he began to get later in the game, and he started hitting tough shots. But that's what you need in terms of a game plan against them. You want Anthony Edwards to take tough shots. You want him to have to make tougher reads. Also, with Mike Conley, they're trying to force him to become a scorer. When Mike Conley comes off of the screen, they're playing drop coverage, trying to force him to take shots. And it's not that he can't make shots. It's not that he's not good at scoring. It's just that he's not as aggressive. So the Suns are trying to take advantage of that and force him to have to become the scorer. So the Suns have a really good game plan. They just have to stick to it and do a better job of executing on the offensive end and not falling into one-on-one basketball. And if they do that, I think that this series could become very interesting because the Timberwolves are not as consistent on the offensive end. So I don't think you're going to get necessarily the same consistent output in terms of scoring from them over the course of a 7 game series. But I still do think the Timberwolves will pull the series out. I feel like they will move on to the second round. It's just how well the Suns can execute their game plan and figure out a way to better get those 3 stars that they have on the offensive end involved.
Yeah, and just to further your point, and the reason why we're saying that they have to do better offensively is because if you're missing shots, turning the ball over, or not even getting a shot up at all for whatever reason, like a shot clock violation or offensive fouls, then that's allowing the Timberwolves to get into a rhythm and to get out on the break. If they can get a rebound, then they have that ability to push it in a fast break before your defense can get back and set up and be able to load up on Anthony Edwards, be able to make Mike Conley the creator rather than the stars. If you're missing shots, that allows the Timberwolves to be able to get the rebound and get out on the break. And you're not able to set your defense back to where you can force Anthony Edwards to make those tough reads that you mentioned, or make Mike Conley the primary creator and make him make the decisions instead of them having the ball in Anthony Edwards' hands or Karl Anthony Towns' hands. Like if you can score and make them get out the basket, that gives you the ability to get back on defense, have a set defense. Everybody can talk their man out. You can get the matchup straight, and then you can actually execute the game plan. But if you're on a fast break trying to play transition defense, then that scrambles all that up. And then you find people matched up with people that you don't want them to be matched up with. You got guys coming down with the head of steam and they're able to find gaps that they wouldn't be able to find against a set defense. So in order to even get to that, you're going to have to execute offensively because you're just giving them bigger advantages. And like just another thing, like that's one of my things that I'm not a big fan of when it comes to the quote unquote big three era now, because I think one, we're past that time where I think more of your roster building matters. We're seeing it all over the league. Two, I think another thing is you have to either have players that are good enough in that big three or players that are the right fit. And I think with the Suns, that's one of the things. I wasn't high on them at the beginning of the year when they announced Bradley Beal coming to the Suns. Like I feel like they have more of a redundant type big three where we know KD likes to operate in the mid range. We know that Devin Booker likes to operate in the mid range. I think Bradley Beal had a pretty big reputation as a shooter, but I think he's actually at his best when he's able to get downhill to the basket, use his athleticism. And I think that when you just have too many redundant players operating in the same area or operate the same way with the ball in their hands, I think that does kind of make you a little bit more one-dimensional. And then on top of that, you throw the kind of watered down supporting cast around them that don't necessarily fit completely. They don't have like a true point guard. I think it's just a lot of things with that team that I'm not a big fan of. And against the tall, big, physical team like the Timberwolves, I think that's really what's bothering the Phoenix Suns offense and why we're not seeing them make shots. And I just think it's a matchup thing with them. Now they can get hot, and I think they are a way better offensive team than the Timberwolves, but I just think they're going to pretty much struggle to find that consistent offensive rhythm as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and that's a really good point that you just made about big threes and this era of big three teams that we have entered into, because now that next apron of the collective bargaining agreement is about to come into play. And that's going to hinder teams from building a legit supporting cast around a big three in the future. So that's something to keep an eye on. And I think you just made an interesting point there. Also, like you just said, when you have redundancy in that big three, it just makes it even tougher because this Suns team is built around shot making. Like that's literally what it's built around. Those three guys are tough shot takers and tough shot makers. And they've done it at a high level over the course of their career. They go get buckets. That's what they do. But if you're not able to do that consistently over the course of a series and you're struggling to do that, and that's what your team is built to do, that's the foundation of your team, it's going to make it tougher, especially when you go up against teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are the best defensive team in the league. They have the personnel to match up with those players better than anyone in the league. So it's just going to be tough for them. Can they make a run? Can they win some games? Can they possibly win the series? Yes, because of a lot of the points that we outlined in the video, but it's just going to be tough. And they're going to have to figure out the best way to attack this Timberwolves defense. And I think, like I just said, they can't fall into one-on-one basketball. They can't allow the Timberwolves to bait them into one-on-one basketball. They have to move the basketball. They have to attack closeouts and take advantage of when the defense has to go in rotation. So, I know I said that a lot this video, but that's what it is. That's literally what the Suns have to do if they want to have a chance in the series.